All right, guys, we are officially one day away from Selection Sunday. So today we're going to be taking a look at my top 10 sleeper teams or Cinderella teams heading into the tournament that you need to keep in mind while filling out your brackets. All right, now a few of these have already qualified. A few of these have not. Okay, so a few of them play the tournament championship either today or tomorrow. But let's go ahead and get into this. To qualify for this, pretty much anybody that's a mid-major. Okay, so if you're a major league, I excluded you from this list. I included the Big East with those majors. So everybody on this list is a mid-major. First off, let's get the obvious one out of the way, Drake. All right, sitting at 28-6, really good resume. They beat Indiana State, which everybody talks about. That is a bubble team, sort of. But Drake should probably be a 10 or 11 seed, somewhere in that range, maybe a 12, but really good resume. As far as quality wins they have, all right, Oakland is a good win. That's a tournament win right there. Akron as well is a really good win that's not really talked about enough. But the one I want to focus on here is this, all right, a 20-point win over Nevada. Really impressive. Nevada, a tournament team, probably a top 7, top 6 seed, somewhere in that range. Really good win for Drake. And I think shows that they can play with anybody. And being that 10 seed matchup, they're going to get the matchup with somebody of Nevada's caliber. And they've already beaten somebody like that by 20. Imagine what they can do in the tournament. As far as other than that, though, you've got the wins over Indiana State that is really impressive to me. I'm really high on Indiana State. I think they're a pretty good team. I don't think they're going to get in, but Drake, really good basketball team that I would keep an eye out on. All right, next up, Oakland. Okay, so speaking about a team that Drake beat, Oakland. All right, sitting at 23-11, probably going to slide up to a 15 seed. Luckily for them, if they were 16 seed, they weren't going to be on this list, but we've had enough upsets that they're going to be on this list for me as a 15 seed. Played a really tough preseason schedule or non-con. You've got losses to Ohio State, single digits, and then a loss to Illinois by 11. All right, Illinois is a top 3, top 2 seed right now. And so that's a really quality loss. Ohio State, we saw what they were capable of at the end of the year as well. That's not a bad loss either. Then we just talked about the Drake loss. All right, single digits to Drake. No shame about that. You've got a win over Xavier, which is a so-called major team. And I think that's a good win as well. You've got a 1-point loss to Toledo. Toledo was actually pretty good this year. Not a lot of people talked about them, but they had a pretty solid year. Were first in their conference. Then, all right, you've got these losses right here. Michigan State and Dayton. Okay, so they've played some really tough competition. So they're not going to be shocked when they play one of these major teams and see the size, see the speed. They're going to be used to it, and they've shown they can play with these teams, not getting blown out by Michigan State or Dayton and playing with Ohio State and Illinois. I think Oakland is a team that probably can shock some people. And if they get the right draw as the 2 seed that they play in their region, I think they'll be all right. All right, next up, McMurray State. All right, McMurray State, 30-3. Will Wade, our former LSU coach here, doing a really good job. The one at the beginning right here, first game of the year against VCU, you've got a double-digit win over VCU, which might end up being a tournament team. Huge win there because VCU is probably going to win the A-10 most likely. So that's a really good win for them. All right, scrolling on down, though. All right, you've got a win over UAB by 21. UAB is playing right now, actually, against USF as I make this video. So McNeese State, some really impressive wins here. Win over Michigan as well. All right, Michigan by double digits. Looking at this resume, I think McNeese State is serious. And right now I've got them on, I think, the 12 seed line. I wouldn't want to see them in the tournament. Next up, James Madison. Okay, James Madison, 31-3, similar record. Have that win over Michigan State at the beginning of the year everybody talks about. Really good win there. You've got a win over Howard. All right, Howard is a tournament team. I know they're a 16 seed, but still, that's a big 20-point win over a tournament team. And then also, like I said, that Michigan State won, another tournament team that you beat. But scrolling on down, kind of ran through their conference. Now, they couldn't beat Appalachian State. I was kind of hoping they'd get to see them in the championship. And Appalachian State actually has a pretty good resume, too. I wish they were in the tournament. They actually beat Auburn, so no shame in losing to them. But James Madison, really good team. Next up, we've got VCU. All right, they just had their win in the semifinals, excuse me, against St. Joe's. All right, so they're headed to the championship. We talked about their loss to McNeese State. That's not a bad loss, though, I don't think. And these are the games I want to focus on right here. All right, single-digit losses to Iowa State and Boise State. Iowa State, probably a 2 seed right now. Lost to them by 4 points. That's a really good loss. Boise State, they're probably on that 8-9 line, somewhere in there, maybe a 7 seed. So single-digit loss to them is no shame in that either. VCU probably going to be a 12 seed if they make the tournament. All right, they still got to win tomorrow, obviously, against the winner of that other game between St Bonaventure and Duquesne. But if VCU makes it, they're legitimate. All right, we've seen them go on a run before. They have some really good wins. All right, you got a loss to Memphis by single digits. Memphis kind of on that bubble cut line. They're out, though. You have a win over Loyola Chicago. All right, Loyola Chicago, we know, went on a run a couple years ago, and you beat them. You've got a win over Richmond, similar situation, but the one I want to talk about is the win over Dayton right here, okay? You got a win over Dayton, which is a for sure tournament team and should be probably a top 8 seed somewhere in there, but you've got multiple wins over tournament teams and close losses to tournament teams as well. I think VCU is going to be all right. Next team we're going to talk about is UAB. All right, UAB currently playing USF, which we'll talk about in a second. UAB sitting at 21-11. If they win this game, they're headed to the finals. They'll probably play FAU, which is pretty much for a tournament bid, but not a bad record. All right, you have a 1-point loss to Clemson. Clemson is a tournament team, so that's not a bad loss at all. Losing by one of them. A win over a major conference team, Maryland. And then moving right along here, you've got a big loss to McNeese State, but again, I think McNeese State's legit, though, so that's not a bad loss by any means. And then right here, you've got a win over Drake in overtime. Okay, so this team has beaten teams that are going to be in the tournament, showing they can play with anybody, I think. UAB pretty much would be a 12 seed probably if they make it. They have beaten South Florida. You've got a loss to Florida Atlantic, which is a tournament team. You've got a win over Memphis, which, like I said, is not a tournament team, but is like right on the outside looking in as far as the bubble is concerned. You have a win over FAU in overtime, so they've beaten multiple tournament teams. And if all plays out, they'll have a chance, like I said, to play FAU again tomorrow. It's not showing this, but they play South Florida right now, currently about tied up at halftime. And then if they win that game, they'll play FAU tomorrow. Probably sitting at a 12 seed, would get a good matchup with a 5 seed probably. All right, next up, we're going to talk about USF, or the team I was just talking about with UAB. So basically the winner of that game, if they can make the tournament, I think is going to be a 12 seed and probably a scary sleeper candidate to make a run in the tournament. UAB's resume is a little more impressive, but USF went on a nice run in the not in the tournament, in their conference that I think is going to help them out. You got a big win over Florida State. You've got a win over Loyola Chicago, which is not a tournament team, but is like kind of like Memphis, kind of a bubble situation where they actually won their conference, but didn't win their tournament. But they have a win over Memphis as well. Okay, we talked about, here you go. All right, their win over FAU, though. FAU is kind of the main quality win in the American Conference for these teams, so that's kind of why I'm focusing on that. But USF, I think, is legit if they can win this game against UAB, though. Easier said than done. I've got a few more here. Next up, Yale. They're currently playing Cornell at the moment as of making this video. Yale sitting at 20-9. They're going to benefit from Princeton getting knocked out today by Brown. They have played a tough non-con. How can I get this crap off my screen? They played Gonzaga, all right, in the non-con, lost by 15. But Gonzaga, we know that's no slouch. They beat Colgate by double digits, almost 20. Colgate is a tournament team. Let's see here. Lost by 1 to Vermont. Vermont is also a tournament team. And then they lost to Fairfield, which is also a tournament team. So not really any super bad losses when looking at this. You've got a 15-point loss to Kansas. If you can keep it close with Kansas, you can keep it close with anybody. Let's see. Win over Santa Clara, not a bad win there. Win over Howard. Howard was also a tournament team. So they've actually played a lot of tournament teams here. Yale. Now we'll see if they end up getting the victory over Cornell. If not, I would replace Cornell with Yale on this list. They're probably sitting at probably a 13, 14 seed, somewhere in that range. There's been just so many upsets that teams just keep moving up the seed line if they make it. I've got two more here. All right, this one, Grand Canyon, they have not officially qualified yet. They play tonight against UT Arlington, but 28-4, really good record. I think this team's legit. All right, Grand Canyon is probably going to go on a run. They have losses to South Carolina by single digits. We know what South Carolina is capable of, but the one I want to focus on is this win right here against San Diego State. All right, they beat San Diego State 79-73. San Diego State, we know what they're capable of. They're probably going to win the Mountain West tonight. Grand Canyon, with that close loss to South Carolina, with the win over San Diego State, I think is a threat to make a run, and probably out of all this list, maybe the best one when I'm looking at it. They're probably sitting, I think, at a 12 seed right now at the moment for me, but could move up depending on what goes down in the other conferences. All right, and last but not least here, we have Akron. All right, Akron sitting at 23-10 on the year. They have a couple wins I want to talk about and a couple losses. All right, they have a loss to Utah State by 3 points. We know what Utah State's capable of. Probably a top 6 seed in the NCAA tournament. Then you've got a loss to Drake by double digits. I know Drake is probably legit. Okay, losing by 20 to them is not good. Now, you don't want to lose by 20 to anybody, but at least you're losing to Drake in the process. 2-point loss to UNLV. We know UNLV was right on that cut line for the bubble picture. And then you've got a win over Bradley. Bradley, look up them. They actually had a pretty good year. Win by 15 there. And then you've got a 1-point loss to St Bonaventure. The Bonnies might be playing VCU in the A10 final tomorrow. We'll see what happens there. But Akron, it's not really their wins. It's more the quality losses they had, okay? But another loss here to James Madison that we talked about a second ago. So, again, it's not really the wins with them, but they've played a tough schedule, which means I think they have seen the teams that they need to see to have success in the tournament. But those are my top 10 right now. Let me know your list. Who are some Cinderella or sleeper teams not mentioned on this list that you would add that you think can make a serious run in the tournament? Let me know. Comment down below. Make sure to like this video and subscribe.